Hello, everyone. Welcome to Creative Bugging Daily Challenge. My name is Nancy. I'm here with Heidi and Lucy. We are known as the Crafty Chatters here on AADL TV. We run a podcast where we talk about all things making and crafting. Today, we're bringing you another monthly challenge. Another month-long daily challenge from Creative Bug, which is a website that we host a subscription to that's free with your library card. This month's challenge is going to be a crochet challenge. It's the Crochet Sampler Daily Challenge by Twinkie Chan. And she has you work a 20 square sampler over the course of 30 days. So you can learn basic crochet skills all the way up to intermediate. And it's a really, really fun project that we're excited to be working on. So we are going to be reporting up to day 15 of the challenge because this is our first video of two. And I guess, how are you guys feeling about the challenge so far?
I think it's fun. I like that even before she started you with the squares, she was like, all right, we're going to make a triangle so I can teach you increases and decreases, even though this is not going to be part of your project. I think like her skill building that she starts out with is pretty comprehensive. So for me, having done some crochet, but like I always have to kind of reference things when I come back to it. It's nice to have that. But then when she moves into some of the later stitches, it's fun for me to realize like that things that look difficult aren't necessarily that difficult. So
yeah, she does make all the later stitches seem a lot easier than what I would initially anticipate them to be. Because I'm a crocheter myself, but I don't do a lot of decorative stitches. It's really straightforward stuff where I do a lot of amigurumis, so stuffed animals and plushes, and some accessories like hats and mittens, but nothing really big and nothing with a lot of like stitch texture. So this has been really exciting for me to learn some new stitches to add to my repertoire. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. There were some videos where I was finding myself having to go back and rewatch them several times because she was going a little fast for me. But I did love her teaching style. And I think part of the speed thing was I was making my life a little bit more complicated because I said that one's not clear at all. I decided to do like stripes and try to like change up my colors a lot to kind of challenge myself to be like, well, I want to do something a little bit extra than the straightforward stitches. But this one is a couple days in advance, but it shows up better on camera than the blue and purple in this one.
Oh, just send me a photo and
I will. Yeah, no, I will. I have photos that I'll send them to you. But yeah, no, I'm really excited about this, and I love that she actually includes things that aren't going to be in the sampler. So the triangle, and then she does a ball shape. And I was thinking to myself as I'm watching these videos of like, are there ways to implement those shapes into the sampler? And I kind of had this idea of like doing little itty bitty triangles and making a mini bunting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought about that when I was doing triangles. I was like, this looks like a bunting.
It does. It was like, this would be really cute. And then the ball little spheres, I was like, well, if I did these in a smaller yarn with a smaller hook, that would give me practice because I want to try crochet with like crochet thread to make 3D things that's really, really tiny. Of like, maybe I could like make little spheres and make little like hang them from either end of the sampler and do like little decorations on it. I was coming up with all kinds of ideas, of course making my life more complicated than it needs to be, but
but I think that's really fun because I've been doing that too. There was the I guess this is the mesh stitch as I was working on it, and it's like nice and stretchy.
Yeah, I loved that one.
Like use this for just a leg warmer after all, I mean,
yeah, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because it's a really easy, nice, and it makes it, I don't know, it just lays really nice. It lays almost like something woven, but then it's like stretchy. And so I hear you though. It's like, I love doing these small samplers because it does get you thinking about projects and how to use these different stitches, which is fun. Kind of like the embroidery would do that too. But this for me even more because I am a crocheter.
It feels more applicable, maybe.
Yeah,
it does.
And I think the whole, I just wanted to talk about the triangle. I think that was a really good practice in the beginning because it gets you used to seeing your stitches and counting your stitches and understanding the structure of a crochet piece. So Yeah. And I also love the left-hand videos because having sometimes tried to teach people who are left-handed, I was like, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to totally be able to do left-handed. And I forgot, I never went back to it. So now I'm trying some left-handed stuff too. So.
Oh, that's cool. It's really hard to find left-handed resources for crochet. I think I find a little bit more for knitting, but I think that's the library of stuff that folks have created is a little bit larger for knitting. But I loved that. I thought that was really cool. Because I was taught by a left-handed knitter to be right-handed. So it was like having both of them I can definitely see that would be helpful. But yeah, I'm just having a ton of fun. I am finding myself being more focused on the product versus the process. So this is a weird switch for me I'm more keen on finishing the squares and finishing the sampler than I am enjoying the process of making them. And that's kind of making me think about how I approach crochet in general, which is very product oriented. So we talk a lot in Crafty Chat about process versus product crafting. And this one for me is a very sharp departure from my normal creative process, which is fun, but it's a little weird of thinking to myself of like, I'm thinking about this entirely differently than I do everything else. So
is that like because how you're choosing your colors for like this little sampler and all that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm choosing, trying to plan out which squares are which colors so that like they'll be cohesive and look good together. Because my palette is a little insane. It's real bright, and there's a green.
Oh wow! And
there's a blue, and there's a mint. So, and then I have black and gray too. But I'm using the Omega Curl yarn.
Oh, how's that working out?
I like it. It's a little hard because it's 3 strands, so it's 3 strings. So if I find myself crocheting too tight, this is also a good lesson for me if I need to loosen up when I crochet because I'm a very tight crocheter. Because if you crochet too tightly with this, you can't get all the strings. It's just impossible. It's also kind of like I have to get it right within the first 3 tries because pulling it apart does encourage the fibers to untwist, which makes it harder to crochet with if it wants to untwist. But what I really like is that I can decide if I want to only use 2 or if I only want to use 1. So when it comes time to do like the little bunting or if I want to do the spheres, I was like, well, I picked the perfect yarn because all my colors will match and I'll just be able to use 1 or 2 strands of it and work with that. So I'm excited to experiment with that. I've been experimenting a lot with gauge because this yarn is a fingering weight yarn and the samplers worked in a worsted weight yarn. So I kind of added something to mess with the gauge a little bit. So I'm using a size F hook, which is she having us use
I think she's using an I hook.
Using an I? I was going to say if she was using an H. I'm
using an H because that's what I usually like. I'm using the Lion Brand Wool Ease, and I usually like to use an H with that just for me and my gauge. But it's funny you mentioned gauge because I almost never I don't swatch.
I know I don't either.
And I really should. But then I was making this square and like I wanted it to be, I don't know. I really I want to make like maybe a blanket or a scarf or something like that. I just love this little like carrying the color is what the thought was.
Love that.
But I was like, yeah, I kind of need to know like how many rows I'm making so I can make it look right anyway. So
right.
Yeah, I'm having to get back in the habit of taking really good notes because every square I'm having to chain a different amount to get to gauge. I have a bunch of quilting rulers that I've never actually used before. So this is the first time that I've ever actually used this quilting ruler to make sure that my squares are the right size. I had that in my stash already, but I love that she uses just a piece of cardboard.
And that's what
Yes, I love that. That's having that resourcefulness and telling people you don't have to go out and buy a bunch of stuff. I deeply appreciate that as a crafter of like, use what you have. That's the only things that you really need to do this are yarn and a hook. That's it. So,
it is tricky too because I'm using a different size hook than her. It's like my like where she's doing 14 chains or 14 stitches, I've done 16 or something like that. So it's like you have to. It's not quite the same stitch count, but
yeah, it pretty much does what she tells me to do what she tells me to do. And I'm looking now and I'm like, I wish I had like put a little piece of tape up here in the corner or something and said what each one was, because I don't have enough familiarity with crochet to be like, oh yeah, that was this stitch. I mean, I think I can go back and match them up. Some of them are obvious, and this is like the, but yeah, that would have been helpful. So I'll see if I can retroactively help myself out.
Because the moss and the mesh are very similar looking too.
Yeah, I did really like doing the moss though, so I think I know which one that is because I just liked the way that worked out. I mean, it looks a lot like moss stitch and knitting, which is really interesting.
It does. That was actually, I was thinking to myself when we were talking about the mesh stitch that I couldn't remember the difference. I couldn't remember which one of my squares was the mesh stitch. I think it's this mint one, I think. But I've been taking a lot of notes and keeping track. So like I have a knitting and crochet bullet journal that I keep of a record of all my projects. And then I import those into the crochet and knitting website Ravelry so that I can keep track of my projects with pictures and everything. So I did a whole chart of like, here's each day, here's the color that I'm using, here's what I chained, my gauge, and then so that I can go back later and be like, I don't remember which one this is, so that I'll remember. But I do really like the moss stitch. That one to me almost looks like a linen stitch in knitting.
Yeah.
And that
I misspoke. I meant the moss and the lemon peel because they're like, anyway.
Well, they're really similar and they look, I loved the lemon peel. I didn't think I was going to like that. And the bubble wrap one too.
I did not like that one. Not all of my bubbles stand out for some reason. I don't know why.
Is this the bubble wrap? Oh, I
That's the one you do like a triple crochet and then a single crochet.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's smaller bubbles. The one that you have is the
well, that's later. Yeah.
Yeah. So she has bubble wrap, bobble, puff, and one other that are like
popcorn.
And I'm like looking at it like I didn't realize there were that many 3D stitches in crochet. Like I'm so confused. So
I wonder how many there are. I mean, there's hundreds. I know there was like a website I used to visit that was like Grandma's Crochet or something like that, and it had all these crochet stitches. And I think she has well over 100 listed on there. So
I've been trying to compile my own list of like crochet stitches to use, and I can't find any cohesive resource that like has a good list, that has good instructions, and it's easy for me to keep track of. Like it's organized really well. Mm-hmm. That's so hard for me to find. But then again, I'm being really picky about how resources like that are organized because that's just how my brain works. So I kind of hit a point where like, well, I'll just make my own encyclopedia of crochet stitches, which is stupid because there's a ton of books that are just all encyclopedias of crochet stitches. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I want to know with these stitches is like, how would I use them? The ones that I think are really fun. Like what would you do with the moss stitch?
Scarves are usually the like first place that you go. I can see a lot of these being really fun to use for like hand warmers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would work well. Even just doing like a rectangle and then folding.
And then just sewing it up the side. Mm-hmm. Leg warmers are good. That's a good project. Hats would be good because you can do like you do a knitting of do a tube of the stitch and then decrease with like a single crochet or whatever the same height of the stitch is. That would take a little bit more practice. So probably like creating your own pattern for that would be more of an intermediate project to do.
You might find sometimes like you can Google like a stitch in the round and you'll find, which will help with the planning as far as like what your stitch count should be. So yeah.
I could also see myself using bobbles as as just like a pattern band around anything. Mm-hmm. So like around the brim of a hat or around the bottom of a scarf, because this doesn't require any particular stitch count. It's just 5 double crochets in one stitch. It doesn't change your stitch count at all. And you don't have to make any alterations, which is actually one of my favorite things about these 3D stitches is it by and large does not require you to have a certain number of stitches. So like the mesh stitch or the can't think of one of the other, like the V stitch, those ones are like chain in multiples of 3, chain in multiples of 4. So you can only have like 21 or 18 stitch chains in order to be able to do the stitch pattern. Sorry, my brain's like stuttering.
For your foundation. Yeah, your foundation has to be like a number of, yeah. Or else like the math won't work out and you'll be wiggly.
Yeah. So it's like if you wanted to mess with that kind of stuff, I would recommend practicing just a little bit more to get that math right. Because the math of this is kind of the hardest part, I think.
Yeah, I would probably look for like a pattern in the stitch that I liked and then start there. Although like the baubles, I liked that so much. I thought it was so fun. I just want to do a whole blanket in that with like a really soft yarn and just then maybe do like, just even like a slip stitch border around it in a different color afterwards and just keep it at that.
Yep. So that was when I was working the baubles, it's like the first time that I actually want to work with a velvet or chenille yarn and crochet because it would just be so squishy and so soft. And I can just see that being really nice. Or making a sheep pillow with bauble stitch.
That would be really cute.
And I think that would be adorable. I actually have a pattern also for a gigantic llama with a little bridle and a saddle that's done. It's all single crochet, but then the fur is done with a chain 10 and then you loop it back into the next stitch. So he's got little loops on him. I was like, well, maybe I could make him with baubles instead. Like that would be really cute.
I want to make I forgot I was going to make like a little bridle for my summer game llama pants. He needs that. But my cat Simon really likes to play with llama pants. So I don't know. I don't know how long the bridle would last, but
it might make him easier to grab maybe for Simon.
Yeah. So I'm excited to keep going. I think this has been really fun. Yeah.
I'm a little trepidatious of trying to finish a whole square in one day. That's because I'm catching myself. The bauble one took me 3 days of maybe 2 hours, so maybe 6 hours total, or a little bit more. I was also making it overly complicated. I don't think I'm going to do that again.
Because of all the color change that you can. I've been able to do one or even two sometimes.
I've been doing a couple. I can do a couple. It depends.
Yeah. Also, I made my squares smaller. Yeah. So mine are 3.5 inches instead of 4, just because I could not for the life of me get to exactly 4-inch gauge with this yarn and this hook. So I just gave up and was like, they're all the same size. It's fine.
I was almost going to just go with 3 inches because I was like, I don't want to spend a lot of time on them and make them quick. But 4 just ended up working out for me. So yeah. But I think it's a nice size too, and it's funny because the pin loom that I keep talking about wanting to get typically or classically is a 4-inch square, and I'm just like, I do like this size. I like this format, so I'm it's teasing me along. But I'm like, well, you maybe don't need a pin loom. You could just work on crochet squares, work with what you still have.
Right.
Well, this is kind of also doing these squares is making it more, situating it more in my head that an Afghan is possible if I do squares.
It is possible.
Yeah, like that would be a more feasible project for me to do with my attention span if I did squares.
Especially if you start working on it and it's getting into the warmer months, because it's like a good travel project. You just do a little thing. Because right now, as I'm working on the border of my massive like hexagon blanket, I'm like, yeah, this is a good craft right now because it's so cold in here. It's like it's nice to have 2 blankets on me while.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to be working on it in August.
No, I wouldn't want to be. So.
Anyhow.
Yeah.
So we'll keep working on our squares.
Yeah.
It's like I'm having too much fun with this in a way.
I have one last question for you guys. Are you guys planning on blocking your squares?
Yeah. I was thinking I might, because some of them, I don't know. I guess I want to see how she puts them together in the end.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do.
Don't block my squares, but some of these, because they're so stretchy and curly. But I think once they're put together, it might not need it, or it might need to be blocked once it's one.
That's what I was wondering. If you block it after you've put it together.
Yeah, but I haven't needed to block any of the squares except for the single crochet. Oddly enough.
Yeah.
No matter how much.
This is all single crochet. Yeah. It's totally like
Yeah, mine doesn't even. It's like I have to stretch it a little bit to make it the right.
Yeah.
And you could easily, I think, just with do the steam blocking,
I actually, because it's acrylic, I didn't want to put an iron on it because I didn't want to melt it. But I just ran mine under cold water, squeezed it out, and then pinned it onto a piece of styrofoam. Or like I have blocking mats. So I pinned it onto the blocking mats to size and then let it dry for 2 or 3 days. And it came out perfectly. So I don't have to pull it, and it is the right size. So like I thought about experimenting with something. There is a way to make acrylic yarn softer. Folks call it breaking the yarn, where you wash it in hot water and then you steam iron it at like a medium temperature, and it's supposed to make it softer. I have an extra double crochet square that I think I'm going to try that with, just to see if it works. I just want to see like because this one is a 4-inch square where all my other ones are 3.5. So I was like, this isn't going to go in the final project, but I kind of want to ruin it and see what happens. Find the limits of the yarn, I guess. But
I mean, I've done the steam blocking where you don't actually put the iron on it, but just using the steam to help bring moisture into
Right.
Yeah.
I might do that.
But this is woolly, so it's like wool and acrylic. So I've usually had good luck with doing that with this yarn.
I think that would be more forgiving, having the wool in there. I'm more used to blocking things that are wool or cotton. I don't generally block acrylic. But then again, all the stuff that I'm using acrylic for doesn't have a gauge.
Yeah, usually you don't need to.
You don't. Yeah, no, you don't. It's not something you generally need to do. But
I'm not even sure what I'm just using. Little bits of stashes that I had. I don't know what my yarn's made out of, so I'll have to find that out before I block it.
That's if you're ever in doubt, you can always just block it at like a really low temperature. Just use
it's wool and cotton. So
cool. Yeah. No, that's got a pretty high temperature tolerance, so you should be fine with that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us for our Creative Bug Daily Challenge, Crochet Sampler with Twinkie Chan. We will see you in a couple weeks where we talk about we finish. I'm doing great today. Where we talk about the end of the month after we finish the challenge, what we think. So until we see you next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and don't forget to love each other. Bye, everyone.
Bye.